Celebrating 9 years of podcast excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Welcome to the Wrestling is Real podcast. We're going to review NWA 74, the two-night event coming from the Chase, the Corino Ballroom, inside of St. Louis, Missouri, where they held for the second year the annual anniversary show, the 74th anniversary of the National Wrestling Alliance. And of course, I love talking about this content. This particular wrestling promotion, I watch a lot of. It's one thing to be said about when they, in January, decided to go ahead and Billy Corgan and his team said, okay, we're going to take our content and not just leave it on Fight. Instead, we're going to do the All Access Pass, which is a good deal, $49.99 for all their pay-per-views. And you get to watch all the NWA and Power and USA shows in advance. And they've been doing that now complete for 8 months. They needed to be back on YouTube, and I'm so glad that they are, because I don't miss either of those shows. I do catch them every weekend to go ahead and get on to what's going on with the shows. And tonight, very much a culmination of what they've been doing on those shows. And just looking at the depth of their roster. Now, since they came out of the pandemic, which they did, last year, 2021, and they were doing shows without crowds, and now they have a limited crowd there now on the Power shows and for the USA shows from Skyway Studios. It's a very small studio. Well, not small studio. It's just a small setup. It looks like they only got about 50, maybe to 100 people in there. So it doesn't sound that loud on the TV set. Tonight at the Corino Ballroom, it was a pretty good crowd. I don't know if it got to, say, maybe 700-800 people at the most. It wasn't that much more than that. It was more like what an Impact Wrestling taping gets. They gave them a lot of wrestling tonight. A whole lot. And there are a lot of names that if you're not watching NWA regularly, it's like watching AEW. Sometimes you're not going to know who certain people are. But if you're watching Power and USA, you see a lot of these new names have been bringing up to the forefront, because they're trying to find names that replace some of the people they had on their roster that really they lost and just they have not been able to overcome. When you lose Eddie Kingston and Eli Drake and Thunder Rosa, you lose Matt Cross, Cole Cabana you lost, among other names. But we're also talking about a lot of veterans that we're going to find their way somewhere else, especially with AEW coming into play. Everything kind of just changed as soon as AEW came in. And Impact Wrestling finally found themselves on solid ground with Anthem Entertainment, getting on Access. MLW doing pretty well with some of their content. Like, it was just some people who just got to be able to go spread themselves around other places. Part of what happened. And some just decided to continue to go to the independent circuit, and they were not worried about being on NWA TV because money might not have been there at all, let alone the exposure. But on their current roster now, when I look at what they have at the moment, they have a lot of people on the roster, don't get me wrong. And of some of the names that they have at the moment, it's not bad, but also they're obviously focusing on some younger talent and trying to get some new people over. At the moment, you have the occasional Brian Myers and Chelsea Green that will be a part of the show. They are definitely focusing on some of the younger talent. Colby Corino is one. They're definitely looking at Kerry Morton, the son of Ricky Morton. They're focusing on Jay Bradley, Jordan Clearwater, VSK, Judias, Marshe Rockett, Maddie Rankowski. And now you have some new names into the mix, like you see a Mercurio, or a Magic Jake Dumas, or a Thurbilly Solace Mason. They're bringing in new people into the roster on a regular basis. Like you see tapings, there's new people coming in. The fixtures with Wrecking Ball Legursky and Jay Bradley, like I said. And then they have, of course, their fringe, the outer realm type of folks with the Miserably Faithful. That's a very big thing they have right now with Ill Begotten. They have their factions. They have their feuds. And they have certain people at the very top. Billy Corgan runs a very traditional outfit in the NWA. You definitely have veterans that are running at the top of the card, in the main event. Regardless of what you thought of night 2, having Trevor Murdoch and Tyrus as your main event for the 10 pounds of gold, we could all talk about that. And we could discuss where both of those stars, they're up there in age. Now, Trevor Murdoch's 41 years old, but I mean, still more or less, he does really well in the ring. He's in his prime. Tyrus is 49 years old. And he doesn't work a lot of long matches anyway when you think about it. But he has his popularity being on the Gutfeld show on Fox News, so that's part of the thing with him. Plus, he's on Fox Nation. He's got his things that are out there for him anyway. There's not a whole lot of new stars that NWA has right now that have such an upside that's going to really be something that people are going to be so overly excited about. Like, I think they have some names that are going to get looked at by other organizations and will really stand out for the most part. Scion is another great example, who gets to win the national championship. And I think also in the women's area, they also have some names that are definitely standing out when you got Kenzie Page or Colin King or Genocide or Natalia Markova. But there's only so much room there is. And when I heard some of the background that the K100 podcast had, because Conan and Disco Inferno spoke with Nick Aldis prior to the show, and mentioned that there's a lot of backstage heat right now because Nick Aldis, obviously with his pull, feels like he has some ideas of where the content's going at some of the people that are getting spots right now on television. And I do believe that he does have a point. But you're talking about a promotion that right now, they're definitely committed to the names they have right now on the roster in terms of who they're going to have holding the belt and who's going to be their main title holders. When it comes to their men's and women's title, you're going to know who's standing out that's going to be holding those belts. Trevor Murdoch has now held the belt for a year, culminating with tonight's win over Tyrus at the pay-per-view. So he's been a year as champion. Well, except for a couple of months where Mike Cardona took the belt, and then Trevor Murdoch won it back once Cardona had to go ahead and relinquish. So the story there with Cardona and Murdoch will continue. Tyrus can still be a part of this. All this could still be a part of this. So there's still a main title picture there with 4 stars in the making. But we're not talking about any new stars that are going to be coming up the mix, going to be going after that World Heavyweight title. And that's what I'm noticing right now is they don't have anybody that looks like such a diamond in the rough that is capable of being at that high level. I mean, they have some stars that have had their days. And maybe they're going to build somebody that's going to get to that point. But there's only so much they can do in a half hour. It's going to be for a 45 to 50 minutes to 60-minute show with Power and 30-minute show with NWA USA with what they're doing. Because there is a hodgepodge of veteran stars that will work out there, and they do a lot for the help of the roster. But some of the other names they have, there's just not much there. So I don't think the momentum is downward. I said that the momentum is neutral. They need to find a direction with some of the stars that can really stand out and draw. Because they only have a couple of names that can draw. I don't know if Trevor Murdoch is completely the guy that can draw, but he is a good hand as the world champion. Nick Aldis still stands out as the world champion that should be front and center on these shows. And for whatever reason, Nick Aldis got a chance to work with Flip Gordon tonight on the second night. That's fine. But other than that, you have so many veteran stars now with some name recognition, which will bring people to the shows. But the NWA is not necessarily concerned with building new stars, except for one that is by far a star that would be a woman star in any promotion. Camille encompasses and embodies the best in women's wrestling. She's got the look. She works well in the ring. She can talk. She's got just presence. And she worked 2 good matches this week. And I'll tell you, the Max and the Impaler match, she got a lot out of that match. Her and Taya Valkyrie, they got a long time in that match. 18 minutes for that match for them. And her entire did a really good job. That was a hell of a match. A very good main event for that show for the first night. I would have almost said, Camille could have been the main event tonight too, the way she's going. But she is the brightest star to me in that promotion in terms of young and so much upside to her. But for whatever reason, they're not doing much else with her. But I'm telling you, she's amazing. Only 29 years old. And she has been die hard in this promotion since 2018. And accompanied with Nick Aldis, Strictly Business, that whole deal, and then her getting in ring and just lighting it up. And she's been a proud title holder. I can't even think about how long she has held that belt so far. At the moment, she is been holding the belt since 2021, and she's held it for 447 days so far. Like, it's been a long time since anybody actually held that belt besides Thunder Rosa, who held it for 277 days, and Serena Deeb. So when you look at what they've now called the Lightning One era for the NWA, and all that's been done in the last 4 years of this promotion, 4 complete years now of the promotion, with that blip of the pandemic in place, NWA is still very strong. It's for one of the lower end promotions, the third tier, I like to call, of the New Wrestling Alliance. Okay, because when you look at AEW directly behind WWE, and then I will say that NWA falls behind Impact, but they're in the third tier with MLW. And then Ring of Honor is attached to AEW, so they're not necessarily put as a promotion anyway. But even if they did, Impact and ROH would probably be hand in hand, in my opinion. With maybe Ring of Honor would be a little bit higher up. But still, there's a significant point about them. NWA has found their identity. They are definitely built on legacy. That's Billy Corgan's, that's his signature. He likes to go with legacy, likes history, likes tradition. It's set on the aprons tonight, the ones that they brought from Leland Race, because that's Harley Race's ring that they used for the show tonight. And so what they did stood out to me. It was a lot of good wrestling tonight, not necessarily over the top. It was very watchable, entertaining to me. Like, I wasn't bored by any of the matches they had. Some of the pre-show matches were a little bit much, but they didn't have to give us 2 nights, but they do. And it was okay. They couldn't do another Empower show. There's a lot of women's wrestling to get in there with no stories they can really tell because they don't have that many women on the roster anyway. Plus, they already had the idea that some of these folks got to work twice, which is okay. They did make some changes on the card, some changes that had happened before all this happened and started up. Let's go into the show tonight, and then we'll go ahead and I'll bring some more commentary on this, but there's a lot to cover. Pre-show, Country Gentleman, AJ Cazana and Anthony Andrews defeated the Gold Rushhh, Jordan Clearwater and Marshe Rockett. The next pay-per-view for NWA will be Hard Times in New Orleans on November 22nd, 3 days before my birthday. They had Rhett Titus over VSK, Rodney Mack with Aron Stevens beating the Pope by submission. And then we learned on the first night that Harry Smith, due to illness, would have to, with Doug Williams, relinquish as the Commonwealth Connection the NWA World Tag Team titles. And it was announced that Hawks Area would face La Rebellion instead, with the championships being vacated. Then you had Caprice Coleman and Gustavo taking on Wrecking Ball Legursky and Colby Corino, the Fixers. And then to start off the night, Nick Aldis for the first night. You give him the front point here because of the respect and what he's already done for that promotion. Because everybody should understand that Nick Aldis really did carry this company before they got the TV, before the Power TV show started. Like, all we had were the pay-per-views, the Crockett Cup, and NWA 70, which really, that's when everything started off for me. When I saw NWA 70, that's when I got interested in the whole promotion again. And that was really the change with Billy Corgan coming into play. Cody and Nick and, tearing it up. Some really great stuff going on. But for Billy Corgan, I can imagine it's going to be tough for him to go and work with some of the stars that he has that he can try to bring on over. Matt Cardona splits time off with GCW, and he was working a little bit with Impact Wrestling and all. Your Brian Myers does the same thing. Chelsea Green does the same thing. The Briscoes were working over here, and now you're seeing them more over to Impact, and now they're doing a little bit with Ring of Honor and AEW. The NWA could definitely benefit from some cross promotion, which is what they did tonight. The MLW National Openweight title was put on the line. Davey Richards defended, which was nice. I will say, and I said this before, that what was done with the Ric Flair's last match and Jim Crockett Promotions, right? I think there's something to be said about how well that turned out. And the card that was built there with the talent they were able to go ahead and acquire and bring on together. And NWA missed out on being a big part of that, which was unfortunate. We did see Kerry Morton out there, which was nice at the last match, pay-per-view. And Nick Aldis on commentary, but really NWA, I wish there were, but then again, they probably weren't even allowed to be booked on the show, or they wouldn't thought of being booked on the show because of the MLW talent that was brought on, because of the AEW talent that was brought on, and plus the other players that they had on before anyway. And the Impact stars. But I feel like Billy Corgan could really use more of working together with some of the other promotions. Like, I don't see why he doesn't work with Impact or MLW to do more with them. Just with a talent exchange. And let some of those NWA stars get some exposure over there. Because they really need to be seen with some other players outside of the veteran talent that NWA has to work off of. Your Jax Danes, your Rodney Macks, your Ricky Mortons for that matter. Because how much are you going to get off of some of those stars when, sure, they have name recognition, but how good are they in the ring to really give some work to some of these younger stars? Because some of them are not able to work as active as they were before. Because you're talking about stars that were very prominent 15, 20 years ago. You look at Chris Adonis, Tom Latimer. Well, Latimer is still Latimer should be very much higher on the card too. But I know they're doing something with Camille on that, but now they've already gone to a different direction. Now you have Control Your Narrative that's going to do an angle now with Latimer, it looks like. You could see some things like that could be interesting. But I would love to see if there's any way that some cross promotion can happen with NWA with some of the other stars coming in. And trying to identify who are the stars they're trying to build up. Who is Billy really getting behind that he feels like he can get a lot of traction from as big stars? Is Colby Corino one of those guys? Like, Camille's already solidified. But are there some others that they can go ahead and grab that will not head up to an AEW or an Impact or MLW or somewhere else that they can catch that will be overlooked by some of those other companies, all those promotions out there? If there's something like that can happen, I'd like to see that. But I don't know if they're going to have that opportunity or not. EC3 against Mims. And EC3 looks great. Took quick work of Mims, by the way. Mims, they were building up a little bit. Had him where he was able to, accomplish a slam challenge against Tyrus. And then he had this chance at the TV title and lost. So Mims has gotten a little bit of chance, but not much momentum after that. And now he gets squashed here basically by EC3. And EC3 talks about nostalgia being dead, and then basically Control Your Narrative comes in to confront Tom Latimer. They want to make him a new disciple of Control Your Narrative. You have Beelzebub's Bedlam match with Miserably Faithful, the MFers, Sal the Pal, Judas, and Gags the Gimp against the Ill-Begotten, Jeremiah Plunkett, Alex Taylor, and Danny Deals. And Danny Deals, being the odd man, the weakest of the group, was the one that got taken out in the match and the one that got pinned. So if anybody, they had Danny Deals eat the pin. And, Ill-Begotten, I mean, there's a couple things with Jeremiah Plunkett that looks really good, but I don't know. I mean, you definitely have something with the characters they have as managers and as people that are a part of the show. When I look at Danny Deals, he's quirky. I think Austin Idol's pretty good for, being so long in his career. I think Austin Idol does really well with Scion. I like him there in that end. And, the Idol Sports Manager thing, Black G's, not much to him. Father James Mitchell still holds really well. And I think the Miserably Faithful, they obviously want to put something behind that. And Judias has a good look. You could put him into a higher level, going after the national title or going after the world title at some point, if that's something possible. So, it's one thing that Billy Corgan did like in Impact Wrestling to kind of go on into the supernatural route, into that out there kind of route, which is where Decay kind of came from. So that's what he's doing here, because he's built another style of Decay with Gags the Gimp, Sal the Pal, Max the Impaler, and Judias. Like, that's a pretty formidable faction. That's good. And they're definitely giving them a lot of time. I think we just need some more of the eeriness from them. I mean, they did a good backstage interview promo with Father James Mitchell. That's a good space. That's not a bad gimmick right there. That faction actually is a good positive for them, in my opinion. The Ill Begotten needs more time to kind of put together, but I think we could see some changes with what they're doing on that group. That would help. They just did the thing with Ross Freeman. Ross Freeman just got dropped out of the group, and Brody Pierce, I guess it is, that is now teamed up. And I'm not sure of all those names. I'm really not very familiar with some of the names of the Ill Begotten so far, because they've been changing people up on that whole thing for a while now. Because there was another person that was the mouthpiece, and now no longer. It's like I'm not able to keep up too much with that. Chris Adonis and Odison, I'm not much interested in it. Chris Adonis doesn't appeal to me anymore. Not for a long time. And I'm not sure what to think when it comes to him so far. I mean, he's good size wrestler, don't get me wrong, but there's not much to him that I'm really getting out of with him anyway. He's just kind of there. The gimmick, kind of the Odin's with a Thor kind of feel. The silver paint, that's his gimmick, but it's like really not much more than that. And I mean, Chris Adonis, he still has the body, and he just looks older and worn out, but he doesn't really add much more to the repertoire. And he worked somewhat with Strictly Business with him and Latimer together as a tag team, sure. But the Chris Adonis just by himself is just bland. He is plain. He is vanilla to me. And Chris Adonis, they went to a DQ, by the way, because Odison got locked in a master lock. Somehow the referee doesn't see the spray can in Odison's hand, and he's able to spray it. Okay, there's that part. The other bright light I think they had that NWA has with a young star is what they've done with their second generation stars. I didn't make a mention of Scion. They finally let him have his first title win, and they've gone a long story with him, where he's this masked character. We didn't really know anything much about him. They talk about his father. Finally revealed that Austin Idol is the father, and now he's accompanying him. And Scion's still a face, while Austin Idol is still very much a heel. But Scion looks good out there. It's worked out well for him. The other one's Ricky Morton with his son Kerry, and Kerry Morton is just a throwback. But he kind of gives me like Von Erich vibes. He kind of gives me that really super white meat babyface feel, which is good. And I still think there's room for someone like that. And he's still very much early in his career. So there's a lot of time for Kerry to really get himself together and make something of himself. In a very short amount of time, Kerry Morton getting a chance at the junior heavyweight title, that was good. He's 21 years old, by the way. Which is one thing that comes out, is that the fact that with him, he is so young, but he's definitely got his work in the ring. He's definitely moving himself around. So to keep it moving along and get him somewhere, that's fine. There's no rush to get him someplace where he has to go. Like, he's doing just fine. So I can appreciate where that was at. Him with Homicide. Homicide had to go and be a little more of a heel to win the match over Kerry, and they set that up. Homicide as a single star, you just don't have him do many promos because the accent's a little bit strong on him, and there was a reason he never was much of the talker when it came to LAX, when Conan could just do a very wonderful job of getting both Homicide and Hernandez over, or whoever the LAX team was going to be. Like, it was just set up like that. Like right now, Homicide, he can still work. You're talking about a guy that's had a 20-plus year career that has just stood out. So him working with Kerry Morton, that was a nice nod for him. They had a good match. Homicide still wins. Matt Cardona did the match with Rolando Freeman. There we go. And Rolando Freeman with a fluke victory. I'm not sure what it is about Rolando Freeman that makes him the standout out of the ill-begotten. I don't know what that's supposed to be about. And so Rush Freeman and Brady Pierce are now the Spectaculars. They're now the new U.S. Tag Team title holders. And Rolando Freeman was out there as like the accompanying with that tag team. But I really don't see what it was that they had to do where Rolando Freeman was the one that won the match anyway. But Matt Cardona taking a loss like that, you know, they're trying to do something with it, but Rush Freeman is the one that they're looking at that looks like somebody to keep an eye on. They obviously feel like there's something behind Rush Freeman. That's the one they really feel like that might also be a standout somewhere down the line, but he's also relatively new as well. He's got a great look, but they've definitely kept him behind factions to try to make something out of him. We'll give him some time, but he's still relatively new. Then you had the Birkin Invitational Gauntlet. One of the names I didn't realize was Samantha Starr, who happens to be Baby Doll's daughter. And she was in that match. And there were a lot of the names: Max the Impaler, Angelina Love, Terrence Terrell, Natalia Markova, Missa Kate, Colin King, who's been doing a lot of work, by the way, working AEW and then over here in NWA. Tootie Lynn, Maddie, Genocide, and Max the Impaler was the most formidable, was the one that won that would take on Camille tonight. Bully Ray and Mike Knox on the tables match. Well, actually, first of all, we had Jack Stain against Scion for the NWA National Heavyweight title. Scion is actually pretty damn strong. What hell of a upper body streak. Because Jack Stain, you know, they made it where Jack Stain was like really just feeling like, oh, this guy's, you know, pushover. They made a point on commentary the fact that, you know, is Jack Stain even going to take off his glasses? Is he going to take off his vest? You know, is he really going to like put in the effort because he knows he's in with a serious opponent? Well, he didn't take it like that. They didn't take it seriously. That's the story they told. And Scion got the help from Anthony Mayweather, who came in and chokeslammed Dane. And then Scion pushed out Anthony Mayweather because he didn't want him in the ring, because he wanted to win fair and square. Scion gets a sleeper to Dane. The referee doesn't see it. That's one thing that I'll tell you that they do. That they do a lot of these referee doesn't see anything kind of stuff. A little too much for me, for my taste. Very old fashioned, but that's the old fashioned way to do it. But I guess, you know, watching so much wrestling now, you don't see a whole lot. Like, there was a lot of near falls in certain matches and all, sure. But the ref not knowing what's going on kind of stuff, that happens a little bit too predictable to me, in my opinion. But that's okay. Scion gets the Death Valley Driver to Dane and wins first title for him. Good stuff. The Bully Ray Mike Knox match, you're going back and you need to go ahead and talk about Aces and Eights from Impact Wrestling and going back to that whole thing with that. They didn't need to take a whole lot of time, but it was an extreme match. Bully Ray got a chance to go and work on here. That's fine. Works out. Hawks Airy, Luke Hawks, and PJ Hawks. Again, another father-son trio. But I don't see much in the Hawks area, or really where PJ Hawks really makes me look at him and just stand out. Like, I don't see, like, he's not, I feel like he's not as advanced as Kerry Morton is when it comes to it. He's good, but the one thing is just a lack of real, like, something more than white meat babyface to that character. The more dimensionality needs to be given to that character. La Rebellion beats Oxary for the NWA World Tag Team titles. Just so they're going to give us another rematch with the Commonwealth Connection at some point, because the Commonwealth Connection beat Bestia 66 and Mecha Wolf to win last time. And they tried to keep Oxary somewhat, that they got screwed over anyway, because Damien 666 was outside the ring and threw the mist out. So it kind of protected both. So seeing La Rebellion win and hold the belts again, maybe that's what they were going to do. They were going to switch the title belts anyway off of Commonwealth, but they didn't. And so there's that. And you saw Doug Williams out there confronting La Rebellion. So they got more story to tell off of that feud right there. And then we get the Camille versus Tyler Valkyrie for the NWA World Women's title, which was a really good match. But you could tell they were running out of steam getting to about that 15-minute mark. But they looked really good. Camille is great at selling. You definitely put her in a lot of spots where it felt like she was going to lose. You want to pull for her. You want to root for her. Like, she is the standout of everybody. If there's one person you had to tell me that I love about the NWA, she's it. She's amazing. And Bully Ray and, them doing the stuff at the Team 3D Academy, they've done such an excellent job with her. What a student. She is wonderful. And it's just a testament. Like, I am surprised that Billy Corgan's been able to hold on to her for as long as he has. Because she's now in her prime. She is hitting every stride right now. She's hitting it on all cylinders. She is full force, doing excellent work. And I'm happy for her. I'm glad she's gotten to where she is now. How can you not love this woman? She's doing so great. Second night, we get in the pre-show, Rhett Titus beats Doug Williams in a submission match. So Doug Williams got a chance to work tonight, even though he couldn't work the tag match. OGK's announced to be the 11th team in the tag team title for the vacant NWA US tag team titles. Then Angelina Love beat Taryn Terrell. Mercurio was injured by May Valentine. Don't matter about that. Kerry Morton over Gustavo. And they made a match that we didn't know about until tonight, that Aron Stevens and Rodney Mack will take on GR Kratos, and a to be announced in a Missouri Tornado tag team match. And it'll be the Pope joining GR Kratos in that setup. Which, by the way, I'm surprised the Pope came back so quickly based on the power tapings, where Trevor Murdoch really destroyed the Pope, and we really didn't get much anything else after that. And not much explanation as to Trevor Murdoch's actions afterward, because he just went right to Tyrus. So I was kind of concerned about what they were trying to do with Trevor Murdoch by attacking the Pope after they had that whole setup in their match on Power. I'm not sure. And then they had a Queen Bee match, kind of just what the gauntlet kind of feel, with Natalia Markova, Maddie, Missa Kate, Genocide, Taya Valkyrie, Colin King. And Markova, who I thought was going to win the Burke Invitational, she wins here as the Queen Bee. So they gave her something with the tiara to kind of, give her some kind of trinket that she could work off of in storyline going forward. But Natalia Markova is someone I feel like they definitely want to do something with that could be a star for them. She's 33 years old, and she's not bad. I think she's done a pretty good job for herself. And I think there's a room for her down the line where they're going to try to get her going after belts at some point. That's when I think things will go pretty soon. We'll find out. As I said, there's a couple of names we can definitely look at right now and see potential out of, but there's just not a whole lot. See, Colby Corino beat Caprice Coleman in a 2 out of 3 falls match. So you're giving Caprice Coleman, who's a standout veteran from Ring of Honor, they put him in here, and he's work with the younger guy. So Colby Corino coming in, and they let him definitely get a standout. Colby Corino's 26 years old. Like I said, there's a whole lot to him that I feel like they feel like with Steve Corino, there's something about this kid that could definitely go. He's a second generation guy. They definitely like their second generation folks for the men's side. And honestly, that's the other part where Billy Corgan can come in and say, look, some of the NWA was built on the fact they had second generation stars that could really stand out. So why not? Then you had the U.S. Tag Team title match. The Fixers winning here, no surprise. I actually think I predicted them to be the winners. Then we had Mercurio versus Magic Jake Dumas. These are just two gimmicks that are put out there. I will say Christy James is very nice to look at, and that's what gives me the appeal to her with Magic Jake Dumas. We'll say that. And she's very unpredictable. Let's just say that as well. I'm not sure what to know about her yet, but I like her. The other person I'm kind of like still trying to get my head around is Thrillbilly Solace Mason. They definitely like this character, obviously with the drag queen on his side. He's also relatively young. He's 31. And it's an interesting character. I don't know. There's something that's probably like a side with him with Pollo Del Mar that might stand out for them. And they obviously don't have a problem putting him in these matches and getting him, some chance to kind of work out there. But Davey Richardson, anyway, he's coming in as the MLW National Openweight Champion. I don't think it was going to drop the belt. And he didn't. But they did a good job with that. Sion then took on Anthony Mayweather for the NWA National Heavyweight title. So defending the next night, and Sion wins. So they're keeping Sion strong. Listen, him working well and defeating Jax Dane to win the title and Anthony Mayweather the following night, they're making that kid strong. So, I'll give them that. And that's where I think things come through is, like I said, second generation. You're wanting to work off the sons of the stars of past and thinking that there's genetics that are going to definitely help these kids at least know what to do in the ring and then just try to build their characters going forward and help them get themselves with promo ability that's going to really stand out. The King's Highway Street Fight for the NWA World's Women's Tag Team titles, Ella Envy and Kenzie Page against the Hex, Allison Kay and Marty Bell. I loved Pretty Empowered here and how they sold. I thought they did a really good job. And, you had the Hex, the fact that they got screwed several times, coming into the street fight, they made it that they were trying to punish Envy and Page. They definitely made it where the Hex was really behind everything. Coming out with kendo sticks, using Legos on the canvas. But for the most part, you're seeing a lot of Allison Kay takes a shot through a table outside, and Marty Bell getting super kicked while a trash can was placed over her head. So they got outmatched, and they got out extremed by Pretty Empowered to retain championships. And so they didn't have any, screw job finish or any kind of illegal activity, if you will, for Ella and Kenzie to win. They won outright in an extreme match. So that was actually kind of interesting. Then Homicide against Ricky Morton for the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship. They set that up the night before. And Homicide continues to win. But they definitely put the storyline with him and Kerry that's going to continue because Ricky Morton, again, getting hit with the ringside bell for the ringside bell. They showed Ricky Morton hit a cutter onto Homicide, which is his own move. And then Homicide had a blow to the back of the head to beat Morton and retain the championship. Nick Aldis versus Flip Gordon. You're talking about a workers match. Good stuff. Cloverleaf by Aldis to win. No matter what, Aldis being kept strong. But you got a workers match all, nevertheless. Then you got the Missouri Tornado tag team match. Aron Stevens, Rodney Mack against JR Curtis and the Pope. I didn't care about the silhouette stuff they were doing on from the back of the entrance. It was just a goof. And, it doesn't matter. Pope and Kratos over here. Aron Stevens not being made much. Him and Rodney Mack obviously having some issues there. They followed up second night with the EC3 Control Your Narrative thing to Tom Latimer. And then the Control Your Narrative team came out to basically bully Tom Latimer to join them. We couldn't hear what they were saying, but that's pretty much what was going on. Then Camille against Max the Impaler. NWA World Women's Championship. Another great match from Camille. No doubt about it. And then your main event, Trevor Murdoch and Tyrus. NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And I'll tell you, it was a bit slow. Tyrus did get himself in better shape for this match. These guys were limited in what they were able to do. Just two big hosses going at it. I understand the criticism why Tyrus shouldn't have been in this match. He was there by name alone. But I mean, that they could have been anybody else. I would have preferred, and they didn't know if Matt Cardona was going to make it back because they had promoted the match so far ahead. I don't know what happened with Nick Aldis. I wish this would get rectified. I don't want Nick Aldis to be out of this whole mix, especially when he talked about how much he spent time and effort to help with the NWA. I want something more out of that. I don't want that just to go away. So I'd like to see what would happen going forward. Nick Aldis and Billy Corgan are able to mend whatever kind of rift they have right now. Let's get that back. And more importantly, let's get Matt Cardona back into the title picture. Let's get him and Trevor Murdoch against each other again one more time. I mean, Matt Cardona, does he deserve the NWA title? It doesn't make a difference, but I mean, he fits good for the storyline, the Cardona family, and the whole setup. So I could see that there. Like, there's a lot more story to go along with Trevor Murdoch and Matt Cardona. They work well together. So let's get that match back up. Obviously, Cardona has the rematch in his pocket, like you said, so he could do that again. And, I would actually love to see if Hard Times gave us a three-way with Aldis, Murdoch, and Cardona. I would love to see that match right there. And I think that would really just go through resolve everything. Maybe they'll do that. I hope they do. Because I like to see that for Hard Times in New Orleans in November when they bring that back up. So there are some names when I'm going through the card and I'm thinking about what they're doing on Power. Joe Alonzo, that's another name they've been bringing around a little bit here and there. He's not bad. Like, he's definitely looked good out there, but he's very just, I mean, he doesn't fit so much of what they do too much there and now, but he's not bad at all. Like, I like what he does. Joe Alonzo, he doesn't have much of, in terms of, he has a lot of charisma, not much promo ability, and not much of everything else, but let's see what happens with it. He's not bad. I'm going to give him some time. Let's see what else they do with him over on Power and see what happens. And go from there. But Alonzo's not bad. There's an upside to him as well. And by the way, he's 25 years old. I always think about, how young are these kids that they got out here and what they're able to do. But, like I said, some of my criticism and some of my commentary is under the impression where NWA I want them to be elevated to the level of where Impact Wrestling is. That's where I want to see them go. Because I feel like there's a lot more to be said. Like, there's an appeal to that show. I enjoy it. I think Billy Corgan's done a pretty good job with what he's able to do. Let's just keep working on some of the stars they have. And if he needs to find some stars that kind of go outside of the realm that don't necessarily fit that legacy type of feel, then there should be a little bit more of a variety of different things. Then maybe you still have some cruiserweight stars in there, some high flying and some other type of feel to, Lucha Libre, kind of like what MLW does, where they just like to go with different styles. If that's what we have to do, something like that would be wonderful. But it's really not bad. Like, I still enjoy NWA very much. I'm a big fan of the product, and I want them to continue to succeed. I just think when it comes to momentum, they're kind of still in the same place as they were. I'd like to see the development of some of these other stars and see if they can build them up to where other companies are noticing and to where Billy Corgan is going to pull the trigger and give these kids a chance at some titles. When you think about, they already did it with Scion. They pulled the trigger on him. Down the line with Kerry Morton, down the line with Colby Corino. We'll find out. And like I said, there's a couple of names they have on the women's side that they can definitely keep building up and doing something more with. I'll leave it there. I think there's a lot to be said. And it's nice that they're going to talk about something besides WWE, isn't it? To get almost talk about an hour about NWA, fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know there's some of you fans that you always are trying to search around for NWA content. If you want me to talk more about NWA, I will. Because I'm always doing stuff based on the audience and what people are listening to. So if you want to hear more talking about, people obviously, when it comes to pay-per-views, people like me talking about Impact. And you guys listen to it, which is great. Ric Flair's last match, you let me talk about that? Great. Because I watch all that. And I watch all those shows intently. Impact, MLW, I talk about all the time. I watch it all the time. I enjoy all of it. And so if we could talk about that more, if you want me to bring up those other promotions, the other members of the New Wrestling Alliance, and not just WWE, please email me. Go to WrestlingIsReal.com, fill out the contact form, or hit me up on social media. You're going to hear all the places you can find me on social media in just a second. We'll come back this Wednesday going into Thursday to go ahead and get things ready for All Out Weekend, Clash of the Castle. That's this coming weekend. Oh my goodness, it's already that time. So much to talk about coming up. We're going to get to that Wednesday going into Thursday. Come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.